For those of you who are familiar with the Jasmine Star Show, I couldn't be more excited to have the man, the myth, the legend. Hold on, I'm going to get to his name in a second. But before we do that, we'll start with a little bit of a backstory told, probably not better than the man himself. So the story here starts in 2012. Now, this guy cold emailed the founder of Airbnb and he asked, hey, come visit the office. And so this gentleman was located in Nashville and was like, yeah, I'll see you Monday, not really knowing how he was going to get from Nashville to San Francisco. And he flew out there, moved to San Francisco. And then the day before he was about to start, he was fired because he lied on his resume. So Sam Parr started his career with a little bit of with an indiscretion, but Sam says that he had, issues with alcohol in college and didn't disclose that. Totally wrong move, or was it? Because in San Francisco, he met a guy where he co-founded a roommate matching business, and it wasn't a great business. He says it wasn't great, but hey, it paid the bills, and then it was later acquired. Okay, so what I start seeing from this man's career is a lot of pivots. So then in 2014, he started a conference for startup founders called HustleCon, and he worked up way to well over 2,500 people coming to this conference. And then 2 years later, I see another bit of a pivot because he's parlaying what he did at the Hustle, and he started that. It became a newsletter. And it's now read by over 3 million people a day. And one of the things I started hearing Sam talk about things like people mocking the idea of this business. Now, there was one media founder who told Sam that he would never make more than $1 million a year, but Sam bootstrapped it. So let's have an emphasis on bootstrapping to over 7 figures a month in revenue. And then he later sold that business for tens of millions to HubSpot by the age of 30. Okay, and that brings us to today. He is the co-host of My First Million, one of the most popular business podcasts in the world. I am a shameless consumer of this podcast. I think my husband and business partner is more familiar with the sound of Sam and Sean's voice than anybody else in our household. And he also does a lot of other things with Airbnb, storage units, new developments, a lot of other investments that we're going to be talking about today. And also your new company, Hampton. It is a peer group for high growth executives, and that is where our paths intersected. Sam, thank you so much for being here on the show.
You are so much better at that than I am. I'm gonna steal that and start doing that. That was awesome. I feel hyped. I bet your listeners get hyped over that stuff. That was really good. I'm stealing that, but thank you.
Well, the thing is, Sam, it's like I can only hype up the truth. Like you got to have a good story. Like you and Sean always say, like when somebody tells you something interesting, you think that's interesting. And then when somebody tells you again, that's interesting, something interesting, you say that's interesting. When somebody tells you 3 interesting things about themselves, you then change it to you are interesting. So your hype story just is like, you're an interesting guy. I have to tell you, big fan of the podcast. I've said it before. I said it again. And one of the things I found it really interesting is you kept on alluding to this new business you're doing. Now, you don't tell a child of the 90s about this new business because I'm going to creep. I'm going to TLC, creep on what you're doing. So I just started doing Google searches and I'm trying to get an idea of what it is you're doing. And then I see a mutual friend of ours, Sophia Amoroso. She tags you in a story on Instagram and I'm like, she knows the business.
Yeah, she knew
the business. And so I hit her up and I'm like, yo, I was like, spill the tea. And so I found kind of like a back way into early beta testing for Hampton. And I applied. No, the crazy thing is, I drank your Kool-Aid. I applied, no website. I think it was like a type form.
It was a type form. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I really wanted to focus on and I really wanted to learn more about was a lot of this in between pivots. You have a lot of success, but these kind of quiet moments of you building. And I really think that whenever we have the opportunity to talk to really incredible people, people always are wondering about the pivot. What do you do on the in-between? How do you set yourself up for success? How do you even figure out what the heck to do? So if you're game, I would really love to talk about those things.
I call it plotting. I don't call it pivoting. I call it plotting or scheming.
Oh, say more.
I'm always plotting. The way that I tend to do things is I plot. So I have purpose downtime, and I'm gonna for example, I'll see a business that I'm thinking of starting, and for the case of Hampton, one of these businesses was acquired for a couple $1 billion. And I found out the name of the banker or the head of the PE firm that bought it. And I found his phone number and I just cold called him. And like, I'll do that with tons of people. Or I'll find like when I was starting the hustle.
Okay, hold on, time out. I want to be like add extra clarity. You have this idea percolating for an idea, and you don't even know it's Hampton yet, but there's this idea that you want to get an aggregate of like young kind of tech web executives together and grow businesses and talk and get real with each other. So this is an idea. And then you see another business that recently sold for billions.
Like,
is that what
yeah, billions.
So you say it's been done, it's possible. And so then you say, instead of just kind of like meandering, you go straight to the banker and you just cold call the banker.
The new owner of the company.
Okay.
I tried cold calling the CEO, but I couldn't find his number. But typically what I do, I believe in this thing called ikigai. It's like this Japanese like concept. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's like basically imagine like a Venn diagram with 4 circles. And it's basically like what skills you have, what you enjoy doing, what the world wants, and what the world is willing to pay for. And the goal is to find something right in the middle. Because if you have a passion and something's not willing to pay for, then that's just a hobby. That's not really a business. So I try to find something like right in the middle. And
Okay,
so like
so walk us through, like, I like to get really granular. Like in this 4-part diagram, what were the skills that you had that you to build the thing you didn't know was Hampton quite yet? What were those skills that you're like, I can do this?
I'm good at content creation. I'm really good at hiring people. I'm quite good at finding untapped gems and people and empowering them and making them awesome, or they already are awesome, but I kind of give them the platform. I'm pretty great at like spotting different ideas and creating a brand around it. I'm not great at managing lots of people. So for that, what that would mean is like, well, if I'm good at all those things, maybe I should start an agency because people will pay for that. And the world wants it, whatever. But like, I'm not wonderful at managing like 1,000 people, and that's kind of how you get those businesses to be quite large. Or it could be, well, I'll just create a free community, but it's like, but I want to build a big business, so that like doesn't fit like my passion, but it fits my skills. So like, I was thinking of like different ways that it's sort of like an art form when you're writing a rock song. Let's say you're writing like Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. Like, I think they created that song because Slash was just like doing like a guitar exercise where he was like working on like just different melodies, and then Axl Rose heard that and just started humming whatever the song is, and then they came up with like a bridge and the melody. And that's kind of how it is with ikigai and building businesses, where like there's no like set point every time. You just kind of grab pieces of here and there, and then it kind of forms like an art. And that's kind of what it was with Hampton. I was like, I have this idea, I don't exactly know what it is, but I'm going to research and plot. And so that's why I called that banker. And I've done this all the time. So when I was starting the hustle, I emailed executives and founders of companies previously that was similar to this. Like, one was the Daily Candy, which was like a kind of like what the hustle ended up being, but mainly for women. And it was around like fashion and like cool stuff to do at night. And then there was Thrillist. So I emailed them. And then I go a step further, is I emailed the first 10 hires of those companies. And so like with the Skim launched, and they had this guy who worked for them named Ryan, and I found his number and I just called him. And
wait, how does one, because when you say I plot, how does one just find? Like, I mean, you don't have to reveal your sources, but like,
I just
people
use
hear
Google.
this and I'm like,
I just Google like, or like for example, I'll go on the Glassdoor and I'll try to like triangulate that with like who left a review and like what roles did they have. All right, they had this role. I'll go look on LinkedIn. Where else did they work? Do I have any connections? Who can introduce me? Or if you want to get really crazy, well, they live in this city. Let's go to the tax assessor's office and find out where they live. And then maybe I could use like, I can like Google the address and find the phone number. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could do stuff like that. Or
no,
like,
I actually don't know what you mean, Sam. This is why you got where you are, which is where I am. Like, tax assessors off. Like, no, but now I know. See, now I know the goods. Now I know the goods.
Yeah. Or like you like Google, like for you, it would be like, or for like, I would Google like in quotations, Parr, comma, Sam, because I know that a lot of websites that list people's phone numbers, they'll be in that, they'll like have my name in that order, like things like that. Or you could get really creepy and find out who do they date, or who do they married, and like, can I triangulate? Like, you do all this weird, I call it stalk and talk. I stalk them, then I talk to them. And so like, you do all this weird triangulation in order to like figure things out. And I basically have tons and tons of Notion documents or Google documents where I'm reverse engineering how something works. and I'm finding the people and I'm putting it in place and then I talk to them. It's just investigative reporting, really, is what it is.
It totally is. And so you talk to this investment banker, and I know the story. So I'm playing the fool because I'm trying to be like all journalistic to show you that I'm like a legit podcaster, but I can repeat the story back to you, like probably in a succinct way. You tell him, I know you negotiated this deal. I think that potentially you're going to want to buy my company. So why not teach me how to become the thing that you want to buy ultimately in the future? Okay.
I was very like, I was like, look, what I'm about to say sounds really cocky, and I'm not trying to come off that way, but I want to let you know that like I'm not a big deal, but I've started a couple things that have worked out, so maybe you should take this seriously. But anyway, I'm gonna start something. I'm probably gonna be a competitor to you in some way, but maybe not. Maybe you'll buy me. Maybe I'll buy you. I don't know how it's gonna end, but I have a feeling you're gonna want to take this call and listen to me. But here's what I'm building. What is there? Do you want to contribute to like just knowledge? If you don't want to, that's cool. We're just going to be friends, whatever. I understand. But like serendipity might happen and something will work out. And so that was kind of basically the messaging. And I'll do things like that constantly to people. And if they are like, yeah, I don't want to talk, which I say a lot of times to people, then I go, it's all good. You have a new friend in the industry. Let me know if you ever want to hang out. But
do you
a lot
really
of
mean
times,
that? Because what I hear, like the subtext is like, I think of like a scene from like, I don't know, Alexander Hamilton. It's like, kind sir, know that I
no,
am down the pub from you. And one day, like, is this
look,
really like you have a friend, or is this like challenge on, bro? Like,
yeah, it is. But like, for example, one of my best friends is this guy named Austin Reef, who founded Morning Brew. When we were running the companies, I was like, I'm gonna effing murder you. I'm gonna crush you. But I respect the hell out of you, and like I really admire you. And now that we're not competitors, I think he's an awesome guy. And I thought he was awesome then. But so it's a very much like a boxing match where
yes.
I can rip your face off, but like we could be friends. So so no, it's basically a sport. So I don't have any ill will. And if they want to not tell me, I get it. And so there's like a gentleman's like, I mean it with the utmost respect.
Okay. So as you're plotting and you're using your 4-part Venn diagram, and you're calling this investment banker, and it's a thing that you are, I heard a recent podcast, you had said that you were going to do.
By the way, that's like a small part of the story, like the banker thing. Like I did that with like 50 people.
No, I know. That's what I was leading into, because like I said, like I'm a creeper and I could just tell your story back. Like, you're going to be worried after the podcast and be like, this girl wants to skin me and wear me like last year's Versace. Like, listen, I do my work. I do my work. But
we call them love knives. It's when people love you so much they want to knife you.
I'm not quite there. Not quite there.
I have a feeling you have some love knives.
No, the goal is after the podcast, you drop in equity a little bit. I'm like, he's a real person.
No, I'm saying you have those, I bet. Those people who love you so much. You're like, you're making me nervous.
So you had said that you had a zebra calendar. Like there were so many stripes in your calendar because you were doing research, talking to other people who might be interested in this idea. Okay. But we skipped over a part that I want to go back to and tap into, because I think that what happens is if anybody's listening and they're like me, they look at what you did and say, that's great. It's just so unlikely. Like he thinks so differently. So I came across, if you don't mind, you used to write a blog post called the Anti-NBA. And there was a post that I came across in 2017. And you entitled it How to Measure Risk. Now, I want to read a little bit from it because at this point, I am sure that how you're assessing the risk of starting a business, specifically because you are in the public eye. So let me read a little bit from that, if you would allow me. Quote, I think most people are horrible at measuring risk. I've been talking to a few people who want to leave their cushy or boring jobs to either A, move to San Francisco to join a small startup they're passionate about, or B, start their own company. What I've noticed about these folks is that most people are horrible at analyzing risk. Here's a simplified version of how I decide on risk. 1, write out the risk you're deciding on. 2, make a list of possible worst case scenarios. 3, address each possible worst case scenario and decide if you're willing to be able to be happy if that scenario happens. If not, make a list of solutions so that the possible worst case scenario becomes nearly impossible. Overall, this strategy isn't unique. Many of you are thinking, this isn't special, this is just common sense. That's true. But it's the process that matters. Most people let their emotions hold them back from doing what they really want. So,
that's a good post. I forgot I wrote that. That sounds great.
Like I said, I did a lot of research because I'm really trying to contextualize, because the goal after every podcast, my goal is simple, that somebody who's listening can do one thing to get them closer to what it is they want. But oftentimes we lack the frameworks to do it. And so you just broke down 3 things: how you measure risk, I'm asking, as you built Hampton, because you have built other things publicly, like you're sharing the journey along the way. And then what I heard for months and months on the podcast, you're like, I'm not ready to talk about my new idea. So you were super private about what you were building. And how at this time, before anybody knows, maybe it precedes the investment banker conversations and the zebra calendars, how are you assessing the risk of building this idea of Hampton?
So I wrote that blog post in 2017. That means I was uh 26 or something, 27. So I still believe that, and that's how I measure the risk. But the reality is I'm a little bit in a different situation nowadays. So back then
Mm,
I was like, back then my net worth was entirely into that one company, and before that I was poor. And so the risk then was like, well, I'm gonna like leave school early and move to San Francisco. What's the worst case scenario? I got to move back home with my parents. Okay, that's fine. I'll set aside $1,000 that will more than cover a plane ride home. So like that's the risk. And I'm like, and I'll just work at like Applebee's. Like I accept that. That's the worst case scenario. I'm fine with that. Like whatever, I'll just do that. And I have $1,000, 500 for a flight, 500 for the first month while I find a job. I'm good.
mhm.
So
So
with
can I pause here for a second? Because oftentimes people immediately skeptic will say, like, when they hear you say, "Oh, I was poor," you sold your business for tens of millions of dollars. So their standard of poor might, like, people are looking at that and being like, "Yeah, but your version's different." But I remember hearing on the podcast, like, your golden days were like you had a mattress on the floor of your apartment, a motorcycle, and like a Budweiser poster on the wall. Like when we
I
talk
was
about
an
poor,
idiot.
well,
No,
what are we talking about here? Because people are like, when you say it's poor, like, what are we really talking about? Is this like San Francisco startup poor, or is this like,
I've lived in San Francisco for 8 years before, but I'm from Missouri.
mm,
I lived in Tennessee. I had a hot dog stand, and some days I would make a grand, some days I would make $100. I spent all the money, so I didn't have a lot of money. I had
mm,
$5,000 because I had a car, so I sold my car for $5,000. So that was kind of my seed capital to move to San Francisco. But I burned through that because my rent was 1,200 or something a month. And I used to tell people as a joke, and I'm ashamed of this, but I would say I'm on the Whole Food scholarship. I would steal pizza from Whole Foods. I would get like a shopping cart and fill it with groceries and walk around while I was eating a slice of pizza and then just walk out. So like there was like another scheme. Like sometimes I couldn't afford the bus. Like I literally had negative money in my account, and like I realized that the bus, like people who would give you your $60 ticket, they would ask for your ID, but you don't have to legally have an ID. So I would just say, "Oh, my name's Greg," and I forget my address, and they would be like, "Well, we can't give you a ticket." Like I did that like 4 times. So like I literally had no money, many times, and then I like would build something, and that would make like $3,000 in a month. It's like, cool, I have a little bit of money. And then sometimes I would spend it just on living. Sometimes I could accumulate it. And
mm,
so,
mm,
like, I was broke. Now I'm in a very fortunate situation. I had, my parents were very emotionally supportive. So basically, if I said, I'm broke, I need you to fly me home, they would have done it. My parents aren't wealthy, but they had I was the youngest in my family, and they had a 3 bedroom house, so there's always a bedroom there. So like
mm,
I did have a safety net in that regard.
mm.
But like when I was in San Francisco and in Nashville, like when I had like some issues, and like I would like find a couch to sleep on. Like I didn't have like no. So yeah, I was pretty broke, but
Mm.
yeah, I did have a safety net. So I
Okay.
want to like put that there as context.
That's good.
Uh,
So I jumped into the story. I apologize, but I really wanted to like set the scene and contextualize what this means, because when you had said when you were assessing your risk at 27, you were in a different situation, and it was ultimately leading you to how you assess risk now. So we could pick that up because I
yeah.
found this on a
So
detour.
here's the fact. I want to like be very clear. I have money now. I have enough money that I don't have to work ever again. So my risk here is different. And I
Mm,
don't want to like I don't want to be one of these guys that like kind of acts whatever. I want to be real. So my risk here was reputation risk.
mm,
Um which is different, and it's important, but it's not like, feed your kid risk. So I had a big reputation risk here, which was I can't launch something that's bad, or that I'm not proud of. I also had the risk of
mm,
I want to create something that is fun to work on with my friends and people I like working with. and I want to have a good life. So the risk wasn't particularly huge with Hampton. It was just don't look stupid. And if I'm going to have my friends as my customers, I have to provide 10 times the value. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my friends. So that's an important risk, but it's not the same as not being able to pay rent. So, but I still follow that same framework that I wrote about. And so, yeah, that was the risk in this case. So it wasn't significant, I guess.
Okay. So if you are now at this situation where you're working through this diagram, you're doing the work to figure out if the idea is actually like product market fit, somebody going to pay for it, how much would they pay for it? And you know that you can add 10x value to your friends and you feel like your reputation can be intact. At what point do you start reaching out and think, I want to build this not on my own. I want to build this with somebody else.
So, Joe Spicer, who's my partner in Hampton, he and I basically were like our own. The reason we had the idea for Hampton was him and I would do what Hampton does. We would meet all the time and we would like share our net worth, which when I started was like, $20,000. It wasn't a lot, but like we would talk about like relationship issues. We would talk about all types of stuff. And so I started researching like different businesses and I was like, Joe, I think I'm going to start something in this space. I might be able to succeed alone, but like I'm pretty lonely. Do you want to do it with me? And so there was the emotional aspect, but then it became very evident that operationally he was a 10 and I was not. And so it was kind of a match made in heaven in terms of reaching out to him. So I did it relatively early because after I sold my the hustle, I took like 18, maybe 12 months off. And the first 3 months was pretty cool to recharge. But then I was like, I'm so lonely. Like I'm like desperate for a friend and dopamine rush every day. And so that's why I hooked up with him. I'm like, dude, I need a partner. I want a friend.
So you and Joe were connected just by way of being industry peers and then talking and
I
having
cold
real
emailed them. I did the same
actually,
thing when I was starting.
Actually, can I read something?
Yeah.
I first met Sam years ago when he was just starting the hustle. My first thoughts were he is going to find a way to hustle this startup to success. Back then, the newsletter space wasn't as popular as it was now. And yet just the way he cold emailed me and got a meeting was impressive. His best qualities are that he moves fast, he's always open to new ideas, and he thinks big. I had an opportunity, and that was what Joe had said when he had originally met you. I was like, how did you meet Sam? Like, what was it about him?
Because the same cold email that I sent the banker or cold call I did with him when I was starting the hustle, I didn't know anything about media. So I just like found articles on Business Insider of media companies they wrote about. And I found his editor in chief, Gretchen or something like that. And I started talking to her. And then she told me about him. So I cold emailed them and I was like, hey, I'm going to be in New York tomorrow. Do you want to meet? And he was like, yeah, sure. So I booked a ticket and flew to New York. I didn't actually have anything scheduled. And so I met with him and we became friends that way. I basically just force myself onto people.
Well, actually, I started asking him because I'm going to be asking you the same question.
I did this with you, by the way. I've done this with you. I don't know. I just like ask a question and you just tell me everything I want to know, and you help me.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I reciprocate, or at least I try to.
Yes.
But like I just fucking ask questions. I don't know. I think people are afraid to do that. They don't want to look stupid.
And the crazy thing is the reason why I joined different groups, and Hampton was so outside of the norm of what I would normally get into. I've never done anything in this capacity. Like when you hear the word mastermind, it has a tendency, like an undercurrent of like digital marketing and a very structure. I'd never done like executive peer-to-peer feedback. And I was like, this is new and it's a different space. And so I didn't know how to behave. So I'm walking through a whole new like ecosystem of how it's done. And I am just watching the community. It's primarily guys. I know that that's changing, but like I'm watching to see the way that people do business in a very different way, and I'm learning
cool,
to
right?
know. It is very cool. And so
a lot of big thinkers,
huge thinkers, and very direct. Like it was just something that you just are simply asking questions, and I'm so excited to like help, and then it's reciprocated. And as you're building, if you're thinking about this big picture, the way that you've done it and the way that you did it with Joe, I want to ask, like, what are the 3 things that you're looking for as a co-founder? So somebody's in the middle of a pivot and they're like, I don't want to do this alone. But before you answer, can I read Joe's answer? Like what he was looking for when it came to a co-founder?
Yeah.
He says, when I look for a co-founder, my priorities are threefold. Number 1, would I enjoy being delayed at an airport with them for many hours? With Sam? Yes. 2, do their skill sets complement or overlap mine? I look for complement, no overlap. And that was one of the things that you had mentioned, like operations, like he's a 10. And 3, are they an optimist or a pessimist? I look for an optimist as I'm jaded enough. So do you consider yourself an optimist?
Yeah. Did you ask him all this stuff?
Hey, don't worry. Don't worry. I plot, bro. I plot. This is me
You did
plotting.
good. I'm trying to find the exact document that we made, but yeah, I'm an
Ooh,
optimist.
yeah. Yeah.
I'll try and find it. But basically, we basically made like a, I don't know. Here it is. I have it right here. I can send it to you, but I don't want you to share this. I don't want you to read all of it, but I'll let you skim it. But basically, we made an agreement of like, I just said like, what's important to you, and he said, what's important, or we each wrote what's important to each other.
Mm.
We said like, what do you want your typical day to look like? What does success look like? Like, what values do you want to live by? And we said, cool. There's a lot of overlap here. We can work together. Here, I just pasted it in here in
Okay.
this
I got it.
Zoom. You
Okay.
should be
Yeah. I'm going to be able to open it. Ooh, I'm not going to read it, but like, so
you
just
can read some of it. Don't read some of the numbers, but like
right.
I'll read a few of mine. I
Yes.
said I want freedom. I want the ability to live in different cities with my family. I want to be able to fly private. I want to be present with my children and wife. I want to own different real estate throughout the country. I want fun, adventure, and living on my own terms. I want to work very hard, but like a lion. I want to work really long hours, but then I want to take a vacation for 4 weeks.
Mm.
And so, and I want to be able to travel the world comfortably. And then I said that what I want for Hampton is I want companionship with you and other coworkers. I want no outside ownership, meaning no VC. I want to get to 100 million in revenue in a short period of time. I want this to be my main job, so I'm working 40 plus hours a week, and then I don't want to work on other stuff. And then Joe said he wants flexibility and freedom. He wants no office. He wants to work remote. He wants to enjoy his work. He wants to work on something very exciting and challenging, and he likes working with
Mm.
me. He said he wants to make a certain amount of money. He wants influence and respect, and he enjoys like proving people wrong, which I wrote as well. He wants to look back 25 years from now and have a really cool real estate empire. He likes having a skeleton crew, so a small team, and he wants to keep the overhead lightweight so we can move quickly. And so we basically like wrote out that, and we said, cool, I think there's a ton of alignment here.
Mm. So I'm going to repeat back because as we're listening or as we're watching, when we talk about pivots, we're actually dissecting the way that one person has done it. Doesn't have to be this way, but I found it pretty fascinating because what I saw in Sam's story, the more that I dug in, was that it seemed like every 2 or 3 years, something had shifted. And I wanted to get into the mindset of what he was doing during those moments of shifting because my career very differently, but has followed that cadence of every 3 years, something like shifts for me. And so I wanted to know Sam is getting different results than I am. So selfishly, I get to have this podcast in service of others, but I want to know how is he approaching the game differently? And what I've picked up is during the downtimes, there is a distinct moment of down. Then he's assessing that Venn diagram. 4-part, like look at it as a leaf and the center point is the thing that he should be creating. And then what he starts doing is he starts plotting who can get me the information, the answers, the connections that I want to know. And as he's doing that, he's researching to see what product market fit is. This is all before anything has been formalized. And then he decides, do I want to do this with somebody else or do I want to do this on my own? And then what he does is he goes out and lays the terms for what he wants to do as he builds with somebody else. I think that is really, really fascinating. Did I miss anything in there, Sam?
No, you did great. You're really good. One thing that maybe you missed was I also am I say the price I'm willing to pay.
Talk
And
to me. What do you mean?
so like in there I said I'm gonna work this hard, so I'm gonna work really hard, so here's the price I'm gonna pay. I'm willing to do all this. I'm gonna go all in. We also said here's how much capital we're willing to put up, and so in this case it was millions of dollars. Here's what we're willing to spend, and then I say here's the price I'm not gonna pay. So
Mm.
I say, so I set the terms, which yeah, I guess you said it.
Mm.
You're very talented at this, by the way. Do you know
Oh,
that?
stop. Oh, stop. Oh, stop. Okay,
No,
but
for real, you're really good.
lastly though, oftentimes the things that I've heard with partners, life partners, business partners, co-founders, is that we often assume, and studies show that we often assume that the other person or the other people know how we feel about them, when in fact, they're actually not quite sure. So I said, hey, Joe, what would you say to Sam to make sure that you know like how much you appreciate him? And he said, the Hampton community is something special. And cracking the chicken egg around membership in the beginning wouldn't have been possible without Sam at all. And so I think it says a lot about your partnership and how you went about that and how you honored that. What are some mistakes, or what are things that you wish you had learned earlier or done differently? Like, was every co-founder relationship this great? Like,
No, a lot of
right.
them,
So,
most were bad. I mean, it's the same thing with girlfriends and things like that. Like, you have to mature. My wife is very emotionally stable. I'm very up and down. She's more of a rock. And like what I learned I had other long-term relationships, and you kind of get into it and you realize, oh man, our values aren't aligned. I love you, but like this won't work, or we don't want the same thing. And so with her, like 6 months into the relationship, or maybe 3 months, I sat down, and this is really nerdy, but I go, tell me the life you want in 10 years, and let's like put a price on that. Like we'll even say, like, literally, tell me the material things you want, tell me the values you want to live by, where do you want to live. Let's make sure that the life that you want is the same as the life I want. And so like I actually think that it's important to have some of these almost nerdy but definitely awkward conversations, and just like be pretty meticulous about it. And it's you kind of got to be mature. It's quite challenging, but I do that with a lot of relationships where we literally map out, and I go, no, you have to be specific. Tell me exactly what you want. And when you have that conversation, you say like, well, I accept that you say you want that, and I accept that it may change, but let's just like paint a picture of like where we want to go. And maybe there's some, it's going to deviate, but that's cool. But I just want to know. And so, yeah, I do that early on. I didn't do that earlier in my career, and I had a couple bad, all types of bad relationships, including co-founder relationships. And we just totally didn't align, but we would work together because of convenience. And that's a pretty bad thing to do.
I want to tap there for a second, but I do want to take a second. Your wife's name is Sarah, and I haven't met her personally, but you talk about her often on My First Million. And when you talked about the frameworking around what it is you want, my husband and I were co-founders, business partners. We've been high school sweethearts. We've grown up together, and every year around the end of the year, we try to set like intentions, terms. And after listening to a podcast where you got really, really specific about the cost you're willing to pay, it really changed the way that we approached, specifically as we started a family. And there were things that
Wait, something I said that influenced you?
You actually, no,
Oh,
not to me.
cool.
You were talking on the podcast about that. You keep on saying, oh, it was really nerdy, it was really geeky, but we sat down and I was like, I don't think it was nerdy or geeky. It gave almost like a deeper insight, instead of like, oh, our goals for the year and what we want. It was actually setting terms and talking about, this is what I want, but it's going to come at a cost. And then acknowledging the cost at the beginning was a total game changer for us, because it's not like, well, I said I wanted this, but we didn't identify what we would have to sacrifice in order to get that. We have to not just say, this is the thing we're going for. It's, what are we okay with in terms of sacrifice? And I've spoken about it before on my podcast, of like what it meant for me to continue being the CEO of Social Curator, as well as taking on other business endeavors and investments and travel. Like I said, I want to continue traveling. We could both say, amazing, great. But the cost of it is, in order for me to travel and still be present as a wife and mother, we're traveling together. And that comes at a cost, a little cost, like physicality, time, but also monetary. That my travel costs are going to be now tripled because it's 3 seats in an airplane, things of that nature. So I think that what I took from that conversation wasn't just like, oh, let's have some like goal setting. It was counting the cost of what it means to achieve those goals.
Yeah. And whether it's your business partner or your wife or husband,
right?
Partnerships are all the same.
Right.
Where you have to like get aligned and have all that trust. The reason why I call it nerdy is because some people have like OKRs for the relationship, and I'm cool with that, but I don't want to like make it entirely like a business relationship. The emotions, I'm an emotional human being. I'm half emotion, half logic, maybe more emotion. But so I do want space for, I do it just because it's cool. Like too often business people, like they're like, well, you have to optimize that. I'm like, yeah, but it's dope this way. Like, and that's like a good enough reason, right? Like I need.
Okay, I have to say, Sam, that I've never like add to my ledger like the fun cost, right? To me, I'm like, I like to do. I find joy in doing, and I know I'm weird. I just like it. To me, people are like, well, what do you do for fun? Like, I like business. That's my fun. That's my hobby, right? And so joining Hampton forced me, and I said, I'm going to do things different in 2023 in regard to my business, than I've ever done before. And I'm like, I don't know what that actually looks like, but I'm around people who think fun should be on their emotional ledger. And I was like, interesting. And so Hampton is hosting an event for you guys. I've never even heard of this freaking word before. What
Rally
the heck?
car.
See, you beat me to it, dude. Whoa, you stole my thunder. I was like, what the hell's a rally car? I literally Googled what's a rally car. And so Hampton has these like breakout in-person events, right? So let me just quickly explain that what Sam and Joe are trying to build is big, really big. They want a big community of like-minded people. But in order for people to be like fully bought in, you're put into a cohort, anywhere from 8 to 10 people with around a similarly sized business. And so you meet with this cohort once every month, but then they have in-person events that are open to everybody. So you're going to have opportunity to mix with people who are doing like 100 million to 1 million, or actually the bar for Hampton to apply, I think now is like 2 million. So you're going to be working with, something like that. And so I decide that I am going to apply to go to this rally car event in freaking Texas. And I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I feel like I'm so out of my element, but I said, if I want different results and I'm looking at somebody who's doing what I want to do, I'm just going to copy it until I make it my own. So look at me adding fun in my life.
Shits and giggles. There needs to be a place for that.
Oh Lord. See, already I'm like, oh man, maybe I should request a refund.
No, like, I don't know. We only have one life. We got to do stuff just because sometimes. And so I like doing too, but then I try to live in a way that makes my 12-year-old self proud. So like, I have all types of toys. I buy toys like crazy, like motorcycles and weird stuff on Amazon just cause, and it just makes me happy. So I think there needs to be like space for dumb stuff.
I agree. Well, I'm learning to agree. But in service of people who are listening, I can distinctly feel like strongly that there's somebody who's listening to the podcast and they love their life partner. There's somebody who's listening to the podcast and they really love their co-founder. But they know that if they were to have these, we are setting terms and the cost of the terms, there's going to be misalignment. And so what I don't want to do is assume that everybody's at the point of, oh, I'm having this conversation before I'm married, or I'm having this conversation before I agree to co-found a business. When you are in the middle of, and you've had relationships with co-founders where you realize that there was misalignment, like what are the patterns? What are the conversations? What kind of changes are you making? Like what is happening in that messy middle?
Resentment. So usually resentment's like the worst thing to have, to where it's like, you're holding me back. So like with Joe and Jordan, we have a CEO, Jordan, like it feels like we egg each other on in a really healthy way. And so that feels good. Resentment is the opposite of that, where it's like, you're not pushing me forward, you're holding me back. And so resentment's real. That sucks, and it is real. I think
have you ever had a break from a co-founder?
Yeah. At the roommate matching thing. He's a wonderful person. It just like, he wanted to be like, I remember the distinct thing where it was like, I was like, which band do you want this company to be like? And he named like some small, like no name indie band. And I was like, fuck, I want to be Lady Gaga. I was like I want to, like, I'm trying to take over the world, bro. I'm not trying to like play in a little small club in a van. Like I want to fly private and like meet Obama. I don't want to like do, you know what I'm saying? Like I want like, I want someone to like put the poster on the wall because I came to their hotel. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I want that good shit.
So then what happens? Like when you realize that you guys want to be two different bands?
You got to cut. I think you end it. Like you end it, which sucks, but I think you have to do that.
Okay. So as we talk about this, there's a difference between I know I need to end it versus I'm not sure I need to end it. So when you're not sure if you need to end it, there comes like this idea of hearing feedback. And so I did go back to 2014 of the anti-MBA blog post. And
keep in mind, the things that you're citing, the weird thing about being like, I'm not like exactly a public figure, but like writing in public is, so in 2014, I was 24. So what I always tell people when they read my old stuff, I go, I still believe a lot of it, but you have to understand I'm evolving. So I hope what you're about to say, I don't look stupid.
Well, what I will say though, is from the 2017 blog post, the caveat was that you had said the risk was assessed differently than food and a roof over my head to social equity and respect from people you really love and respect. Okay, different. But I actually strongly feel like, based on what I know, I feel like we're still going to be hitting like a 95%. I put like my stamp of approval on this one. So research shows that negative feedback helps us learn and grow more quickly than positive feedback. However, negative feedback only works if you're in the right mindset. Otherwise, it can be catastrophic. You must make it about the thing you did and not about you. You have to be really secure and feel good about yourself if you're getting critiqued, if all you're getting is critiqued. So really, the key to build up your self-esteem muscles is by showing them that you are okay when things go wrong, and that feedback is about what you're doing and who you are, and not who you are. Decouple performance from self-esteem. So you had said how you like to get feedback. And so
I still do that.
Talk to me. So this is why I'm like, I still strongly feel, based on what I've heard, that that's what you like. And so here we are, we're talking about what you've done to pivot. You've talked about, co-founder relationships that aren't working well, what you learned, applied it to this new working relationship. But as you grow with Joe and Jordan and the whole team, you're bound to get negative feedback, but you're not like, I'm going to ruin, throw this relationship away. How are you prepared for that? And how vital is it to keep going? Like, we have to get negative feedback. How do we prepare ourselves to hear it from our team?
Negative feedback is the best stuff. So like, usually when I get negative feedback, I try to compliment the person and I say, I'm so thankful that you told me that. So I'll give you a very specific example. Yesterday, for a while, I told Jordan, grow, 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 grow. And then when we got like 5,000 applications, I was like, F this, man. Don't grow that fast. We can't ruin this. Like, but I said that in front of a bunch of people. He goes, can I talk to you privately? I said, yeah, sure. He goes, pick a side. Either tell us to grow or tell us not to grow. But you can't say that in front of everyone because you're going to make me look stupid if I'm giving orders. And I was like, you're totally right. You're 100% right. I'm so appreciative that you called me out on that. So another example, like with the pod, like here's like really a more specific examples. Like sometimes people will like make fun of the way I look. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I'm fat. I probably should like lose weight. Like I'm chubby. Like when I used to be a little chubbier. And then now that I'm like very comfortable with my body, people will make fun of me. I'm like, oh yeah, but that's bullshit. Like I'm fine. I'm great. So like I pick and choose kind of who it is that I listen to. But sometimes I try to like listen to the feedback and I say, are they right or wrong? And I really reflect on it. And if I think they're right, then I actually try to like listen to it and act on it. But sometimes it's like I don't care. Like for example, on my podcast, when they say like this guy's a tech bro, I'm like, well, am I like broy? I'm like, I don't think I am. I think I look like it, but I don't think I am. So I'm just gonna like ignore that. That's bad feedback. Or this person's just projecting because of the way I look. Or if they say like the audio production sucks, I'm like, yeah, I know it sucks, but like I don't care. I'm focusing on the content right now. I'll get to it later. I'm not listening to that. So like I pick and choose like what I listen to. But usually what I do is I create a Google form and I ask people 2 questions like, what do you think I'm doing well at? Where do I suck? And I don't even read the well thing. Like I don't care. That's just a red herring. I just want to like distract them. And then another good question is like, what am I out of 10 for these specific things? And usually everyone's going to say like a 7 or an 8. And you'd be like, all right, great. How do I get to become a 10? And then that's when they tell you like where your weakness is. And so I do that a lot.
I have a personal example.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, that was me leading you into the say more. Like I was setting
I said, let's hear it.
Okay, so I don't know how the conversation began, but I sent you a message on in Hampton, and I was like, "Where are all the girls at?" I don't know where we got that, and I was uncomfortable saying that because it almost made me feel like I couldn't hold my own in the community. But I was just asking.
But did you think that I was uncomfortable receiving that? I wasn't
0.
at all.
No, I didn't. But, and that's why I wanted to bring the story up, was because instead of you like asking more questions, you immediately owned it and said, got any ideas? And
I think I said, you're right. This is embarrassing.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going to be like, yeah, you said you were really embarrassed. No, I
am. And I was like, you're right. This is stupid. Like this is a total failure. You're totally right. And sometimes I'll ask people for ideas. I don't think the earnest should be on you to tell me how to do my job, but I do like look for feedback. But Yeah, it's embarrassing. There's no doubt
Well, I
about
want
that.
to talk about what I really wanted to focus on was number one, there's a difference between receiving feedback and taking it as criticism or a critique. A criticism is just saying what you're doing wrong. A critique is like, maybe we could try different approaches, which you were so willing and able to listen to. But it didn't stop there because you set up a meeting for me to meet with this guy named Jordan, who I didn't know at the time was in the process of becoming the CEO of Hampton. So what you essentially said was, I hear it, we're going to start acting on it, but we're going to make it more of an official thing. And to be able to talk to the CEO of this amazing big organization and have him listen and hear and ask for ideas, I did not feel like I was asked to fix a problem. I was asked to add color and insight to how it might be approached. And so I wanted to take that as a takeaway for listeners, because I too pick and choose the feedback and criticism that I receive from the stuff I pull out. So in the context of as we pivot, we're going to be starting new things. And in the process of starting new things, there are a bunch of unanswered questions and a litany of ways to get better. It's not enough. Now the bar, what I have learned going through this experience, it's not enough to say, I hear you. And it's not enough to say, like, I will change. It's, I want you to see actions that we're taking on the back end of that. So I wanted to highlight that as a main key takeaway.
And also, when I get feedback in public, my knee-jerk reaction, I was just talking to a friend of mine who is in Hampton, who criticized someone on Twitter. And I said, hey, just so you know, you criticize this person and you're right. But if you ever did that to me in public, I'm gonna like, my knee-jerk reaction is to like get in a fight with you in public, and like, because you just embarrassed me. You should have told them maybe privately. Because like, even though you're right, it was pretty embarrassing because like you could make them look silly. And so my whole thing, because we're in public and people make fun of me all the time, on in YouTube comments and on Twitter, sometimes I'm like, fuck it, I'm biting the bait. I'm getting into it. But then a lot of times I have to remind myself, like, don't react, please don't react. And so it's the right way is to be graceful, but you can't give feedback negatively in public. Otherwise, you're just gonna, it's just bad for the
So
recipient.
what for you? I mean, I have a bar. I take it all. Like, I take it all. I'm like, listen, like, the thing I tell myself is like, people who are doing better than me are not leaving the negative comments. So it's like, that's literally what I'm like, okay, I just tell myself, like, listen, you got too much time sitting on your couch with those Cheeto orange fingers for you to type on the keyboard and tell me your opinions about me. But, um, my line is, if somebody comes at JD or Luna,
Yeah, they're dead.
it's like, I'm wearing some big hoop earrings, like, hold my earrings, give me my brass knuckles. We going down, honey. We going, like, no, I'll take it.
I call it kill
up.
mode.
They never signed up to be in the arena. They are bystanders. You touch them, you better run. And if you take a swing at me and you miss, you better sleep with one eye open. I'll tell you that much. What's your like?
Same
All
thing.
right.
If it's family, I'm like, kill mode activated. So yeah, it's the same thing. If they attack my integrity, like for example, this one person. So like, I usually start startups, but I love doing like information products. I have this thing on like how to write better, and someone made fun of me, and they're like, "This is a scam." I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? How is this a scam?" And like, what am I? And so if they attack my integrity, I'll usually pounce. I'm like, what's the scam here? Show me proof. Show me evidence. Don't like make this out like I'm a liar. So if they do that, I get really angry. But if they just say I'm stupid, I'm fine with that because they're probably right.
As we kind of like dovetail towards the end, one of the things that Sam was talking about, so y'all can see for yourself if it's a scam or not. If you go to copythat.com, I actually came across Copy That before I actually knew Sam in the capacity that we know each other, which is like big air quotes. I just say it so that I sound cooler as a podcaster. Was going through what it meant to sell in a different way. So I grew up in this industry learning, like, oh, this is the methodology of selling. And then I came across a very simple page, lead acquisition, making an offer. And I was like, whoa,
Was it good?
It was really good. It was really good. It was really, really good. And so I say that first and foremost as as an outsider going through that experience. And then I say it now as somebody who like knows you, like, listen, check it out for yourself. Sam, I have to say thank you. I'm going to pull back a little bit. And so that my goal is fulfilled. And that goal is to get somebody to taking action. And so if you find yourself in search of or desire of a pivot, or you find yourself, AKA plotting for the next thing, first things first is to do deep dive of that diagram, find out your special center, and then do the diligence and work to figure out product market fit. And if anybody can help you understand the industry and get you to where you want to go faster, then you get to ask yourself if you want to build alone, and that's totally cool. And if you're at a place, if you want to find a co-founder to go through some of the frameworks that Joe and Sam listed, and to understand that there is a cost of everything you're going to do, and to make sure that your life partners and business partners are co-signed on that cost. And then also understanding that every time you do something new is you develop your next pivot and you're plotting in your next venture, you will be criticized. And criticism and critiques are a good thing as long as you're setting the framework for them. Sam, how can people get more information about who you are and what you do?
So I have a few things. I'm active on Twitter. That's kind of like where I like to nerd out. So my name is the Sam Parr on Twitter. You're always criticizing my Instagram. It's not the best. I think you said
it's a critique, bro. I give you ideas. Whenever I say like, hey, we got to up the game, it comes with, this is what you could do. You know, I'm bossy. Like, I'm a boss. So I was like, listen, let's go. Here's the plan. Get at it.
And I agree with you. My feedback to that is I just don't want to be on my phone. I wish Instagram will let me do all this stuff on the computer, on the desktop. I'm like, I don't want to touch this phone. I hate this. But yeah, my Instagram, I think you said, quit posting shirtless pictures of you working out. And I was like, yeah, that's probably right. So if you happen to be one of the very few people that want to see that, that's available. Twitter, joinhampton.com is Hampton. The Hustle, I don't own it anymore, but I still love it. And we talked about Copy That. You can just go and look at it. It's a fun sales page. I like writing that type of stuff.
And understanding that Copy That is for people who actually want to learn how to write better copy. And it's very rote. It's doing the work again and again. It's like a proven age-old approach on writing better copy.
It's like learning to play music. When you learn to play music, I love music analogies because I like music. You don't like, you don't hand no one gives you a guitar and you say, go write a song. You like play other people's music and you learn like the texture, the patterns, the melodies. You do that for a little while and then you're like, oh, I love this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing from these 8 people. I'm going to combine them. Cool. I've got something really unique here. And that's the same thing with writing, in my opinion, is it's really hard just to be like, oh, just go be a good writer. Instead, it's easier to copy other people and then just like learn different patterns and best practices. And then, and so with writing, you can literally copy things out by hand. And it's very effective. So yeah, that's what it is.
On that note, I want to say thank you for allowing me to copy your version of Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and happy birthday on my business guitar. And one day I'm going to come up with my own riff and Axl Rose will be like, shh, this girl, she's got it.
You're like,
she's got it.
Dude, you're like a rapper. You come up with all these good phrases like very quickly. You're very you've got we talk about this in Copy That actually. You have rhythm. You've got very good rhythm when it comes to speaking. So I'm learning from you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show. We look forward to, if you have enjoyed this conversation with Sam and you're on Twitter, give him a shout out and or tag him on Instagram so that he really ups his game. Because while we love photos of his dog Sid and his gorgeous wife Sarah, we would really like for him to showcase more of this business prowess online as he builds out funnels and ways for people to connect at joinhampton.com. Y'all, like always, it is an honor and a privilege. Thanks for listening.